All right, our next department is the Department of Emergency Communications. Joining us today, we have Mr. Steve Martini, who is the director. He is joined by Ms. Angela Milliken, who's the Assistant Director of Operations, along with Mr. Dwayne Vance, who is the Finance Manager. And Mr. Martini, you have the floor. Oh, Mr. Martini, that's the only working mic right there.
Thank you. No, probably that'll work. That covers it. Thank you, Madam Chair and council members, for allowing the opportunity to address you regarding our operations. My name is Stephen Martini, and I serve as the Director of the Metro Nashville Department of Emergency Communications. With me today is our Administrative Services Division Manager, Dwayne Vance, and our Assistant Director of Operations, Angela Milliken. In the audience, we also have our Assistant Director of Support, Paul McAllister, and Davidson County Emergency Communications District Board Chair Cleo Duckworth and Business Manager Mark Lanham. We will be able to operate within the proposed budget for fiscal 22 with the help from the Mayor's Office and key Metro Nashville departments, coupled with our long-standing partnership with the Davidson County Emergency Communications District. We identified opportunities to invest in our personnel, our facility, and supporting technologies to improve the consistent quality response to both emergency and non-emergency calls for service that we currently provide. An increased cost in rent at our backup facility for the third consecutive year continues to drive interest around constructing a new primary facility owned by Metro government as part of the proposed public safety complex near the pending Southeast Police Precinct on Murfreesboro Pike. We are also appreciative of the Mayor's proposal to restore longevity pay, allowing the opportunity to recognize those tenured employees who commit their careers to Metro government. We are glad to continue our strong relationship with the Davidson County Emergency Communications District, which is providing more than $9 million in operating expenses specific to personnel training, communications technology, public education, recruitment, and a considerable renovation project at our primary site, which will continue to serve as a sustainable backup location for years to come. We are coordinating with the Office of Management and Budget and the Emergency Communications District to continue providing relevant training to support our mission-critical efforts. With regards to the service our department provides, the Department of Emergency Communications answers both 911 and non-emergency calls for service related to law enforcement, fire, and medical concerns, serving the whole of Metro Nashville and Davidson County. In 2020, we answered nearly 1 million calls for service, with an average answer time for 911 calls of 6.4 seconds, which represent more than 370,000 of those total million calls. Some members of our team also serve as part of our Field Incident Response Services team, which supports specific planned events, response to and recovery from disasters, and partnering with law enforcement to regularly conduct specialized law enforcement operations. We expanded a partnership with Hub Nashville this year to harness the power of 311, hubnashville.gov, and the Hub Nashville smartphone app to increase efficiencies to reporting non-emergencies, freeing up 911 dispatchers to answer 911 calls faster. These public safety communications professionals are supported by a strong team of competent trainers, eagle-eyed quality assurance specialists, and incident researchers, finance and payroll and human resource experts, and a proactive and in-tune information technology section to ensure we have the latest resources available to our frontline personnel to best answer the call from citizens and visitors and support our field responders in our combined mission to calm chaos, restore order, and bring clarity to confusing situations. Taking a moment to give an enthusiastic Go Preds, I am glad to coordinate with my colleagues to answer any questions the council may have.
Councilman Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the leases, and I remember at the very beginning of this current term that we had to approve a renewal of the lease, and I believe it's probably in my district because it was from the airport authority. So I'm just curious, how many locations do you operate if there's more than one, and approximately how much per year are we spending on rent?
Great. We do operate 2 locations, our primary location near Belmont University and a secondary backup location near the airport off of Harding Pike.
And so will both of those facilities then migrate to the new Southeast precinct, or what's the plan?
The plan, if we have the opportunity to build a new facility in the coming years, would be to discontinue the rent that we pay at that Harding location, use our primary site owned by Metro government as our backup site, and use that new location as a primary location, primary site.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you.
Councilman Druffel?
Yeah, just a quick, I was looking through the metrics, and it looked like your target answer is 15 seconds. Is that correct?
The target answer time is 15 seconds, 90% of the time on 911 calls.
You just mentioned 6 seconds. I saw that you were under 10, so you're meeting your metrics. I was just curious to see that, which is fantastic. It looked like for the last year you're consistently under that number, which, congratulations.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
see that there was matching numbers and metrics when I'm looking through these metrics.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Councilwoman Hurt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Martini, you know, we've been spending quite a bit of time together over the last 3 or 4 months, and I don't have a question. I just want to stand and thank you for your excellent leadership and for the work that you all do. The 911 dispatchers are absolutely amazing. It's just, I'm in awe of what it is that you all do and how well you do it, and I just wanted to stand and share those sentiments.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to our team. I'm proud of them, too.
Mr. Martini, can you explain a little bit more about the staffing ratio? You mentioned that in your questionnaire, and I didn't quite understand the information that you put in there.
Sure. The staffing ratio, are you talking about the ratio of numbers of calls to the number of people we need to have on duty?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. One of the challenges, as Councilmember Dribble mentioned, is to identify how many people we need to have actively answering calls to successfully answer those within that 15-second standard of 90% of the time. I've been doing this for 17 years in Tennessee, and in every place I've been, that's always been a challenge to accomplish. And the challenge is we always have more phone calls than we have people to answer those calls. The COVID pandemic in March and April allowed us a unique opportunity to reduce our call volume when businesses closed and all activity pretty much ceased, to reduce our call volume by about 40%, which brought it in line or even under the number of people we had on staff to answer those phone calls. So for a period of about 6 weeks, we far exceeded those national standards of answering 911 calls within 15 seconds 90% of the time and 20 seconds 95% of the time. We analyzed that 6-week period, really looking how many people did we have logged in to answer calls at any given time, and what was the ratio of 911 calls to people available to keep those standards met. We determined it was about 3.5 calls, 911 calls per hour per logged in dispatcher. If we moved any higher than about 5 911 calls per person per hour, logged in, ready to take a call, we would hit one metric but not the other, perhaps the 15-second standard but not the 20, or the 20 but not the 15-second standard. If we got outside of that 5-second standard, if our call volume expanded the number, so our ratio per dispatcher was more 7, 8, 10%, we were certainly below that national standard number. This data really was very exciting for me, the first time ever really to be able to put a metric on how many people we needed to have in the seats to answer those calls to that volume. So that's the metric that we're looking at. I can't say that we're hitting that all the time. I can say that we're adjusting our midnight shift numbers, because if we look shift to shift, we've seen 100% compliance on most hours on midnight shift, which lets me know we can be a little slower on midnight shift and still meet that 90 and 95% standard, and maybe refocus some of those resources on a day or an evening shift where the call volume's a little higher.
Councilman Bradford?
Thank you, Chair. I almost think that we're secretly, unconsciously working together, because when you asked your question about ratios, it reminded me I did have one other question, and it was about staffing. So based on the ratios you just went over, and I apologize if you did say this and I just missed it, but to be 100% efficient and staffed, what numbers should those look like? Are you close to meeting that? Have you met that? Or how many more would you need to be completely satisfied with staffing?
Sure, that's dependent on call volume, but if we look at call volume, which we have from 2015 through 2020, year-to-date 2021, we see, especially 2018 and 19, we saw considerably higher call volumes and requiring at some points where we may have currently 12 to 14 to 15 people on the phones. Call volumes may scale to keep that same ratio in place. We may need 25 to 28 people on the phones. To do that well and maintain that level of consistency in staffing, we need to move from our current 191 employees to 250 employees.
All right, thank you. That answered that question, and I'll take this opportunity as well. Councilmember Hurt, I think this year we realize how much we utilize your department and how much we need that department, and how much we take it for granted that it works just automatically. So thank you. Thank your staff on behalf of the council, District 13, the entire city, because this past year y'all have earned it.
I will do so. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hurt.
I think I'm on that mindset with the both of you. I just wanted to stand because I'd like for you to give a snapshot of what it takes, the training, how intensive it is, because I don't think the public really understands the necessary training that you have, the hours and the weeks. So could you just give a snapshot of that so people will know and understand how intensive it is, please?
Sure, I appreciate that question. We give a dedicated 12 months of training time to new hires who join our department. Wonderfully inside of our world, we don't require a whole lot of previous knowledge to come and join our team. It's all on-the-job training. You can come knowing nothing, and we will prepare you on the job, but it does take 12 months to do that. That 12 months of training starts with 6 weeks of classroom training. It's in between 320 and 360 hours of pretty rigorous in-classroom training, academic training, where they're learning the concepts and the data, really, of how to take a 911 phone call, how to communicate properly with adults and with children and with people who speak different languages and all of those the various natures of callers who may call and in the various situations they may be in. How to dispatch law enforcement and the needs of law enforcement to meet their various concerns, whether non-emergency or critical emergencies. How to dispatch fire departments and maintain. We don't just dispatch the call. We also stay with that incident through to disposition when those units clear or transport to the hospital or wherever they may go, and maintain incident command composure for those incidents, supporting incident command to ensure communication up and down the chain and across the incident remains clear. And also medical, right? Sometimes when we think 911, what we think of most immediately is that CPR call or the pregnant caller or the person experiencing a stroke, and that's about 20% of our call volume. Really, 80% of what we deal with is law enforcement in nature, and probably about 70% of what we deal with is non-emergent in nature. It's and that's probably something that's also required in training classes, is to understand that you're answering a phone call about a perceived emergency from the perspective of the caller, that we don't get to identify what an emergency is for the person experiencing that emergency. We need to identify the help, regardless of or outside of judgment, outside of some preconceived notion. We're going to send help or connect that caller with help in the emergency they're describing. Once they complete that 6 weeks of training, which requires 4 or 5 tests and certifications that are required both at the state level and national level, we far exceed the state level, which is about 52 hours of initial training. We exceed that by about 6 times. We put those folks onto an 18-week on-the-job training program paired with a trained communications training officer whose job it is to help them take the concept of what they learned and apply it at the dispatch position, and really go through and have somebody there to serve as that safety net for the first 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks as they learn and catch mistakes. As you're learning a new job, you're going to make mistakes. What a terrifying place to make a mistake as you're learning a new job, right? Is dealing with sending a life safety in somebody's emergency. But we do have that safety net to make sure that any mistake made by the trainee doesn't make it out the radio to impact the response, until we feel and they've proven confidence to themselves that they can be successful working independently. That proves again in law enforcement radio dispatch. That process is followed again in fire and medical response dispatch, and takes about a year to get there. After that year, it takes another year for those folks to sit and earn and build the confidence for themselves to say, everything I've learned over the last 12 months, I can prove to myself that I can do that independently for the next 12 months. And that's really where we see folks somewhere around the 2, maybe 3 year mark get into the role that says, maybe I want to participate as a communications training officer and give back to the department the way I was invested in when I first got here. But it is extensive and it doesn't take a long time, and we truly need to understand all the different components. I could go on and on. There's other coursework, whether it's stolen vehicles or missing persons, or communicating through that framework or network nationally to recover that stolen vehicle. If your car is stolen in Antioch and recovered in Montana, that we have a network of reaching out to that police department to bring it back, right, to recover that, to see that, to find the missing person wherever they're missing from, to understand the incident response and communication system of all of our response partners, so that when we're asked to do something or asked to coordinate a response, whether it's an emergency response like the tornado or floods, or a planned event like a Predators hockey game or the Grand Prix that we're going to see here soon, that we understand both needs. When you have the presidential debate in a very active political season, and it was coming down to, you not only do have the event, you have the threats that are concerned with those events, and our folks were there for all of those events to make sure that communications between all assigned parties, between federal government partners, were there to communicate cleanly and clearly, not just from a technology standpoint, but from a messaging standpoint, from literally the words that are spoken, that what needs to be had is obtained and dispatched and processed through. So it's certainly an intense career path and a wonderful opportunity to serve, and I work with a great team who loves to serve in that way. Thank you for asking that question.
Councilwoman Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. Along the lines of the employees, they're the ones doing the work, much like these are high-stress jobs.
Yes.
So I have concern always about the level of stress that these employees are under, not only because you're 59 positions shorter than what you should be, right? You should have 150, and we've got 91. I'm sorry, 250 and 191.
Yes, ma'am.
What resources do you have or don't have to help your employees manage this level of stress that they have doing their job?
Thank you. I appreciate that question. We have some great resources here inside of Metro Nashville government. I've joined as an employee only about 14 months ago, so and again, having done this at 4 different centers throughout the state of Tennessee, I'm familiar with what's offered in various places. The employee assistance program offered to Metro employees is fantastic. The PASS program offered specific to Metro law enforcement employees, which also includes our team members, is fantastic. So there are opportunities for our team members to seek out assistance or help or some additional questions, or an opportunity to talk through some of these challenges as they see them or as they experience things that may be a conversation with somebody who worked in public safety communications and has sort of an insight into the nature of the types of calls that we take. So those are great opportunities. We do. One of the wonderful things now, I can say we are as staffed as we have ever been in the last 12 years, which is exciting. That allows our folks to take time off. I think it's very important for them to not be at work as much as it is to be at work, that they're not drowning in overtime or mandated overtime. They're able to use their free time and personal time. We do not have, and thank you for asking that question as well, a sufficient exercise space. One of the challenges that our folks have inside of our profession is we build up the adrenal response, that fight or flight response in these stress situations, and that goes nowhere inside of our work, where and normally you would build up the fight or flight and you would burn that to get up and run or expend that energy. It doesn't go anywhere inside of the dispatcher. They just hang up and they answer the next call and they answer the next call, and those fight or flight responses can dump multiple times in a shift. So having a workout space, there's a treadmill, and again, our emergency communications district is amazing and supports us very well and has provided some workout equipment, but we're limited in space where we are. So space to allow that to happen, kind of quick access. Certainly also the opportunity to be recognized with a public safety pension plan that would allow an earlier retirement in line with law enforcement and our fire partners and our medical partners, that says if you come in and work for 25 years, you're going to go home at the same time we see our response partners in the field go home, because this is a job that is taxing and it drags on. And to say when you arrive at 18 or 19 or 20, like I said, we'll train you everything you need to know when you come and join us, but to say you're going to sit there and take these types of calls and have this type of impact for 35 years is a lot. Hear these screaming mothers and these lost children and these individuals who are threatening to kill themselves and all those things that we deal with as a regular part of our job. If that were a resource, it would be appreciated for our folks, for retention, for recruitment. All sorts of things would help to bring those folks in. Thank you for asking.
So, Mr. Martini, going back to the staffing, because I want to make sure I understand where you are in terms of staffing. So you currently have 191 positions.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have 10 unfilled positions?
Yes, ma'am.
Are those all call operator positions?
They are not all call operator positions. We had one longtime member of our quality assurance and training team who retired this spring, so one of those positions would be in that capacity. The others are frontline call taker positions, and those are vacant on purpose because of the amount of training. I just kind of outlined how it takes a year to train new people and 6 weeks of class. We really wait until we have a dozen or so vacancies to hire at one time to warrant the time commitment that it takes to put our training staff through offering this year-long academy. We like to do that no more than twice a year is the goal, and that 9 or so folks represents less than 5% of our total staff.
So you currently have money in your budget to fill those positions once you get to that 12?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. We're waiting until fall on purpose.
And so the 250 that you mentioned, that number wouldn't be necessary unless you reach that 2018, 2019 call volume. Did I understand that correctly?
That is correct. It wasn't necessary this year, and we're taking some other steps. I think it's important to stress that. We're taking some other steps, like our partnership with 311 and Hub Nashville, to route non-emergency requests. If there's a car that's been parked in your neighborhood for 3 days, to take a picture of that car and submit it to our dispatchers through a smartphone app that can still make it to be dispatched to law enforcement without tying up a ringing phone line to allow our folks to continue to stay focused on those 911 calls. That's an opportunity we have to reduce ringing non-emergency phone calls and increase our 911 call answer time without coming to council and asking for money for personnel. We also are changing our call protocol vendor for medical and fire response, which reduces the number of questions we have to ask without reducing the level of service we're providing to the people who are calling. If we can spend less time on the call and get more information or the accurate information necessary to send the right help to the right place at the right time, that allows us to take more phone calls in a smaller amount of time because we're not spending as much time on the phone. So we're looking at implementing, I say not looking at, we are absolutely implementing these types of changes and are optimistic in the year ahead that will provide data necessary to see if we can influence that call ratio, maybe bump that 3.5 call average, maybe up to 5 calls per person per hour without requiring additional staff to achieve that goal.
All right, we are at time. I am scanning the room looking for any other hands. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Martini, Ms. Milliken, and Mr. Vance for your time.
Thank you very much.